The acrid smell of burnt coffee jolted me awake. I stumbled into the kitchen, my eyes barely open, to find Michael hunched over the sink, scrubbing furiously at the bottom of our ancient percolator. "Late night?" I asked, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. He jumped, nearly dropping the pot. "Ellen, I didn't hear you come in. Yeah, sorry about that. The Johnson account, you know how it is." I did know, or at least I thought I did. The Johnson account had been his excuse for the past 3 months of late nights and weekend emergencies. "Charlie has a game today," I reminded him, reaching for a clean mug. "You promised you'd be there." Michael's shoulders sagged. "Right, of course, I'll make it work." As he rushed past me to get ready, a whiff of something floral caught my attention. It wasn't my perfume, and it certainly wasn't the burnt coffee. "New cologne?" I called after him. "What?" "Oh, probably picked it up at the office. You know how Janet overdoes it with the air freshener." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Janet, their 60-year-old receptionist, who smelled perpetually of mothballs and peppermint. The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of getting Charlie fed and out the door, fielding calls from my mother-in-law Samantha about her upcoming doctor's appointment, and trying to make sense of our mysteriously dwindling bank account. At the baseball field, I settled into the bleachers next to Laura, whose son was Charlie's teammate. She leaned in close, her voice low. "So how are things with Michael?" I forced a smile. "Fine, why do you ask?" Laura's eyes darted around before landing back on me. "Oh, no reason, it's just, well, I saw him the other night, at Rosie's diner. He seemed preoccupied." My stomach clenched. Rosie's was clear across town from his office. "Oh," was all I could manage. As the game started, my mind raced. The late nights, the dwindling account, the unfamiliar perfume, and now sightings across town. When I got home that evening, I made a beeline for the laundry room. There, buried in the hamper, was Michael's dress shirt from the night before. I lifted it to my nose, and my world tilted on its axis. The floral scent was unmistakable, and it definitely wasn't air freshener. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the morning silence. I groaned, knowing exactly who it was before I even looked at the screen. "Ellen, dear, I need you to come over right away," Samantha's voice crackled through the speaker. My hip is acting up something terrible. I bit back a sigh. "Of course, Samantha. I'll be there in an hour." As I pulled into her driveway, I couldn't help but compare her immaculate lawn to my own neglected garden. Everything about Samantha's life seemed perfect, at least on the surface. She answered the door in her silk robe, leaning heavily on her cane. "Oh, Ellen, you're late. I've been in agony waiting for you." I checked my watch. 55 minutes. "I'm sorry, Samantha. Let's get you settled." As I helped her to the living room, she clucked her tongue. "You know, Michael's cousin Sarah would have been here in a jiffy. Such a thoughtful girl." I gritted my teeth. Sarah, the perfect daughter-in-law that never was. "Well, I'm here now. What can I do for you?" Samantha launched into a litany of complaints and demands. By the time I finished running her errands and tidying her already spotless house, it was well past noon. "Before you go," Samantha called as I was putting on my coat, "be a dear and fetch that photo album from the top shelf, the one with Michael's wedding photos." I froze. "Michael's wedding photos?" Yes, the ones from his first wedding. To Sarah, of course. The room spun. "First wedding?" Samantha's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Oh dear, didn't Michael tell you? It was such a lovely ceremony. Sarah looked absolutely radiant." I stumbled out of the house, my mind reeling. Michael had been married before? To Sarah? And he'd never told me? As I sat in my car, trying to process this bombshell, my phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "Need to talk. It's about Michael. Meet me at Rosie's diner." My hand shook as I typed my reply. "On my way." I pushed open the door to Rosie's diner, the bell jingling overhead. Laura waved from a corner booth, her face etched with concern. As I slid in across from her, the vinyl seat squeaked beneath me. "Ellen, I'm glad you came," Laura said, her voice low. "There's something you need to know about Michael." My heart raced. "What is it, Laura? I just found out he was married before. To his cousin Sarah, of all people." Laura's eyes widened. "Oh, Ellen, there's so much more." She glanced around before leaning in. "I've seen Michael, with other women, at the country club, at restaurants. He's not exactly discreet." The world tilted on its axis. "What are you saying, Laura?" "I'm saying Michael's been unfaithful, multiple times." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. I'm so sorry, Ellen. I thought you should know. I pulled my hand away, anger bubbling up. Why are you telling me this? How do you know all this? Laura sighed. Because I used to be one of those women, years ago, before I knew you. I'm not proud of it, Ellen. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need to go. Ellen, wait, Laura called after me, but I was already pushing through the diner door. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process everything. Michael's secret marriage, his infidelities, Laura's confession. It was all too much. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Working late again. Don't wait up. Something inside me snapped. I started the car, determination setting in. It was time to find out exactly what or who was keeping my husband so busy. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure entering the diner. It was Michael, looking furtively over his shoulder before slipping inside. I parked across the street, my heart pounding. Who was he meeting? Laura? Someone else? One thing was certain. I was about to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I couldn't sleep that night, turning as Michael's soft snores filled our bedroom. At dawn, I slipped out of bed, determined to find answers. While Michael showered, I rifled through his desk drawers, my hands shaking. Nothing in the first 2 drawers, but the third. Jackpot. A stack of bank statements I'd never seen before. My eyes widened as I scanned the pages. Regular payments, thousands of dollars, to someone named Patricia. The shower stopped. I quickly photographed the statements with my phone and replaced everything, my heart pounding. Over breakfast, I watched Michael, searching for any sign of guilt or deception. He seemed oblivious, chatting about work as if nothing was amiss. I might be late again tonight, he said, kissing my cheek. Big presentation tomorrow. I nodded, bile rising in my throat. Of course. Good luck. The moment he left, I was on my computer, logging into our joint account. The balance was lower than I expected. Much lower. I dug deeper, finding transfer after transfer to that secret account. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. Can we talk? It's important. I hesitated, remembering her confession at the diner. Could I trust her? But she might have more information about Michael's activities. Meet me at the park in an hour, I replied. At the park, Laura was already waiting on a bench. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. Ellen, there's something you need to know about Patricia, she began. My breath caught. You know who she is? Laura nodded, her eyes filling with tears. She's me. Or at least that's the name Michael knows me by. The world tilted sideways. Laura was Patricia? The woman Michael had been paying thousands of dollars to? But why? I managed to choke out. Laura opened her mouth to respond, but her gaze suddenly shifted over my shoulder. Her face paled. Ellen? Michael's voice came from behind me. What's going on here? I turned slowly, my mind racing. This was it. The moment of truth had arrived, ready or not. The envelope from Charlie's school felt heavy in my hands. I tore it open, my heart sinking as I read the contents. Charlie's tuition payment had bounced. How was that possible? I rushed to the computer, logging into our bank account. The balance was even lower than before. Where was all our money going? My phone rang. It was Charlie's school. Mrs. Thompson, we need to discuss Charlie's enrollment, the administrator said, her voice stern. If we don't receive payment by the end of the week, I'm afraid we'll have to ask Charlie to leave. I stammered out a promise to resolve the issue, my mind reeling. How could I tell Charlie he might have to leave his school, his friends, his baseball team? When Michael came home that evening, I confronted him. The tuition payment bounced. What's going on with our finances, Michael? He wouldn't meet my eyes. It's just a temporary cash flow issue. I'll sort it out. With what? I demanded. The secret account you've been funneling money into. Michael's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, I hissed. I saw the statements. Who's Patricia, Michael? What have you been paying her for? So his face paled. Ellen, I can explain. Then explain, I shouted. Explain why our son might have to leave his school. Explain why you've been lying to me for months. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken truths and shattered trust. Finally, he spoke. I need to make a call. As he retreated to his study, I stood there, trembling with anger and fear. I had a choice to make. I could wait for Michael's explanations, his excuses, or I could take matters into my own hands. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. We need to talk. About Michael. About everything. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It was time to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, leaving Michael's protests behind me. Whatever Laura knew, whatever secrets were still hidden, I was going to find out. Tonight, I stormed into Laura's house, my emotions a tempest of anger, fear, and desperation. She sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, looking as if she hadn't slept in days. "Tell me everything," I demanded, sinking into the chair across from her. Laura took a deep breath. "Ellen, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." She explained how she'd met Michael years ago, before I knew him. They'd had a brief affair, which ended when Michael met me, but recently he'd reached out to her again. He said he needed help. Laura whispered, "He was in trouble and he needed money. I agreed to help him launder it through my accounts." My world tilted on its axis. "Launder? What are you talking about?" Laura's eyes filled with tears. "Michael's been embezzling from his company. He's been using me, Patricia, as a cover." The pieces fell into place. The late nights, the secret accounts, the dwindling finances. It all made a horrible kind of sense. Just then my phone rang. It was Samantha. "Ellen, dear, I need you to come over right away. It's about Michael." I arrived at Samantha's house to find her sitting with a stern-looking man in a suit. "Ellen," Samantha said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle, "this is Detective Johnson. He has some questions about Michael." The detective stood. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm afraid your husband is under investigation for embezzlement and fraud. We have reason to believe he's planning to flee the country." My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the sofa. "This can't be happening," I whispered. Samantha took my hand. "There's more, Ellen. Sarah, Michael's first wife, she's come forward with allegations of her own." As the detective continued explaining the extent of Michael's crimes, my phone buzzed. A text from Charlie. "Mom, where are you? Dad's acting weird. He's packing bags and talking about a trip. What's going on?" My heart raced. Michael was with Charlie. He was running, and he was going to take our son with him. I stood up, adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to stop him," I said. "Now." My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, racing towards home. Detective Johnson followed close behind, sirens blaring. I dialed Charlie's number again, praying he'd answer. "Mom?" His voice was tight with fear. "Dad's acting crazy. He says we have to leave right now." "Charlie, listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't go anywhere with him. I'm almost home." I screeched into the driveway, heart pounding. The front door was wide open. I rushed inside, the detective on my heels. "Michael!" I shouted. "Charlie!" A crash from upstairs. I took the steps 2 at a time, bursting into Charlie's room. Michael stood by the window, a duffel bag in one hand, Charlie's arm in the other. "It's over, Michael," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "The police are here. Let Charlie go." Michael's eyes darted wildly. "You don't understand. I did it all for us, for our family. By stealing? By lying?" I inched closer. "By dragging Laura into your schemes?" His face contorted. "Laura told you? That backstabbing. Mom?" Charlie's voice quavered. "What's going on?" In that moment of distraction, Detective Johnson appeared behind Michael. "Mr. Thompson, you're under arrest." Everything happened in a blur. Michael releasing Charlie and trying to bolt, the detective tackling him to the ground, Charlie running into my arms, sobbing. As they led Michael away in handcuffs, he looked back at me, his eyes pleading. "Ellen, please, you have to believe me. I love you. I love our family." I held Charlie tighter, my heart breaking for the life we'd lost, for the lies that had shattered our world. "I'm sorry, Michael," I whispered, "but love isn't enough anymore." As the police car drove away, I sank to the floor, holding Charlie. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the uncertain future, the sheer exhaustion, crashed over me. "What do we do now, Mom?" Charlie asked, his voice small. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the long road ahead. "We start over, Charlie. Together." The courtroom felt suffocating as I sat, waiting for Michael's sentencing. Laura was a few rows behind me, her face etched with guilt. Samantha sat rigidly beside me, her usual complaints silenced by the gravity of the situation. As the judge delivered the verdict, 15 years for embezzlement and fraud, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Michael's eyes met mine one last time before he was led away. In them I saw regret, fear, and a plea for forgiveness I wasn't ready to give. Outside the courthouse, Samantha turned to me, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Ellen, I'm sorry for everything. You've been stronger than I ever gave you credit for." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As she walked away, Laura approached hesitantly. "Ellen, I know I can never make up for what I've done," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I want you to know how sorry I am." I took a deep breath. "Laura, I'm not ready to forgive you, but I understand you were manipulated too. We all were." That evening I sat Charlie down for the conversation I'd been dreading. "Mom," he said before I could start, "I know things are going to be different now, but we'll be okay, right?" I pulled him close, my own tears finally falling. "Yes, Charlie, it won't be easy, but we'll be okay. We're stronger than we know." As we sat there, I realized that despite the pain and betrayal, I felt a glimmer of hope. The lies that had shattered our world had also freed us from a life built on deception. The road ahead would be challenging. There were financial hurdles to overcome, emotional wounds to heal, and a new life to build. But for the first time in years, I felt truly awake, truly myself. I looked at Charlie, seeing my own strength reflected in his eyes. "We're going to start over," I said, my voice firm with newfound resolve. "Together, we'll write a new chapter, one that's honest, brave, and entirely our own." As the sun set outside our window, casting a warm glow over our living room, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The storm had passed, and though the landscape of our lives had changed dramatically, we had survived. More than that, we were ready to thrive.